To show you how to export or render a video of a rotating turntable plus your object. So basically how to make a video of your 3D object rotating nicely on a turntable. Now the first thing I'm going to do, as always, is delete everything in the scene so we can start from scratch. So we're going to hit A on the keyboard to select everything, X to delete. Okay, so nothing in our collection, the scene is empty. Now the first thing I want to do is create a turntable. Now I'm going to go, well, there are numerous ways to do this, but the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to add a mesh and I'm going to add a cylinder. Now if I want to make this into a turntable, it's way too, the scale is all wrong. It needs to be much thinner. So to change the scale, I'm going to, as always, I could hit S on my keyboard, but if I hit S on my keyboard, I'm changing the whole cylinder, and I don't want that. I just want to change along the Z-axis. I want to make it shorter. So to scale on one particular axis, this is quite a handy tip, on your keyboard hit S, and then hit X or Z, X or Y, depending on the axis you want to scale. Now because I want to scale on the Z axis, I'm going to hit S and then straight away, before clicking anything, Z. And you can see that I'm just scaling on the Z axis. So now I can make it really thin, and I'm very happy with that as a turntable. Okay, so I can now hit S and scale the whole thing a bit bigger because it's looking a bit small. And I now have my turntable shape, so that's a good start. The next thing I'm going to do is add a simple composition to the top of my turntable, and in your case this might be, well, this will be the 3D object that you actually want to make a video of. So we're going to go to add mesh. In the previous video we had a cube with a sphere on top, so we'll do the same. We can use these options down the left here to reposition our objects. I'm going to make my cube a little bit smaller. Okay, make it a little bit bigger. And on that cube, I'm going to place a UV sphere. Again, scaling issues. Okay, so let's just say that for this video, I'm going to render out a full rotation of this cube and this sphere, which are my 3D composition. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is very quickly add a material color to them, as we did in the previous video. So to do that, I'm going to select the object I want to add a material to, go to the tabs here, second to the bottom, from the bottom rather, a sphere with a checkered surface, hit new, and we're going to add a material. I'm going to call it, after the geometry for clarity, I'm going to call it cube, go to base color, hit base color, and we're going to make it blue. Now again, in the previous video we can't see that change, and that's because we're in the solid viewport, which will not show material settings. So we need to go to the top here, top right corner, and we'll for now we'll go to viewport, the look dev viewport shading, so we can actually see our colors. So we can see we've got blue. For the sphere, I'm going to again assign a new material. I'm going to call it sphere, and we'll make it orange. Okay. I will also assign a color to my turntable because it will show up in my video, and I'm going to try and make it as neutral as possible. So I'm going to add turntable. I'm going to make it, I think I'm going to make it just grey. It kind of stays out the way a bit. Now, the first thing I want to be able to do is actually make my turntable rotate, because at the moment this is just a static composition. My aim is to make the turntable rotate and make the cube and the sphere move with it, so that I can then make a video of that. So the first thing I need to do is animate this turntable. Now to do that, what I'm going to do is, in the previous video we mentioned these handy tabs along the top. We're going to go into animation, the animation workspace. Now on default what you can see is the kind of a view of the object, so you can see how you're animating it. Here we have the view that we'll be editing in, and along here most importantly is the timeline. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set an animation for the location and rotation of my turntable at 1. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit record down the bottom. And remember, when you're in record mode, every single movement you make to this will be made into a keyframe. So when you're finished with your animation, be sure to turn this off again. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit I on my keyboard to bring up the insert keyframe menu. Now you can create a keyframe for just the location, just the rotation, just the scale. We are actually only manipulating the rotation, but I'm actually just going to suggest click location, rotation, scale. So we just animate all of those. Now what you want to do is you want to create a sort of 360 rotation animation on this turntable. Now to do that, what you want to do is pull the playhead along to where your final to the end of your animation. So if I know that I want my rotation to last for 200 frames, I pull it to the end, 200. And then I'm going to hit I on my keyboard again. I'm going to hit lock rot scale. So I've got a set of keyframes at 0 and a set of keyframes at 200. So 0, there are keyframes, and I know there are keyframes because I can see them, but also everything in the transform here is going yellow. When it's not animated, they are green. And then when I hit to the end here, again, it's yellow. But what you'll notice is there is no movement on my turntable because I've only keyframed the exact same position at the beginning and the end. What I want to do is at the end of my animation, I want to make sure that this has turned a full 360, so I get the animation of a rotating turntable. So scrub over to the end of your animation, to those keyframes. It's still on record, everything's yellow, and go into this view here. And what we're going to do is actually just physically rotate the turntable. Now, in the previous videos or earlier, you saw there were these kind of handy buttons down the side for manipulating the geometry. They are there, they're just hidden. If you hit the arrow, they'll come up again. Another way to do this is just hit T on your keyboard, and that will bring them up and hide them. So we're going to hit rotate. Now, I could just say eyeball this and pull it around until I think I've done 360. I wouldn't recommend that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the figures, the values rather. So to do that, I need to actually bring up another menu, another panel which I cannot see, which is again here, hidden by this arrow. So we're going to click on that to bring up something. Just bring up what you can see here. Now, what I want to do is actually rotate the turntable on the Z axis, so that the line going down, I want it to spin around that. At the moment, if we go to location, rotation, we're looking at rotation. If we look at the Z, it's 0, and it remains 0. But what I want to see is at the beginning, it's at 0, and then when I go to the end, it's at 360. So what I'm going to do is just mouse over my keyframes here and hit 360. So I might not zoom in so you can see. What we can see now is the turntable is moving. It starts, Z rotation is at 0. So keep looking here as I scrub along, and you can see the values are going all the way up to 360, which is that's exactly what you want. And if you want to see the animation without scrubbing, you just hit spacebar and it will play it. Now, when you watch this, it might not be that clear, but it's actually slowing down at the beginning, getting faster and faster and faster and faster. Probably its fastest now, and then it's gradually slowing down. And we don't want that, because if you're looping, it's not going to look like a consistent loop. It's going to basically get slow. Sorry, start slower, get faster, get slower again. And that is because the interpolation isn't right. So if you scrub back over your keyframes, do it again, right click on the keyframe, go to interpolation mode and click linear. So let's just go to interpolation mode linear on all those keyframes, and what you'll see now is that the rotation is constant. And I think talking about Bezier and linear interpolation types it's more for another tutorial, but for now just be sure that your keyframes are on linear interpolation. Okay, it's good. We've now got our turntable rotating. I think it's a bit fast, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag these keyframes by making sure they're selected. They're selected when they're yellow. Hit G and just pull them along. And I think I'm going to pull them all the way along to 400 to make about half the speed. Now what you can see is that this is a light grey and this is a dark grey. That's purely because your end animation is at 250 keyframes and we're now going up to 400. So all we want to do is just set the end down here to 400. And what that will do is if you hit spacebar, you'll see it goes all the way along. So you've got a nice, it could actually still be a bit fast I think for a turntable video, but we'll stick with it for now. Going all the way to 400, and because the end of the timeline is 400, it just goes back to the beginning and it keeps looping. And this is exactly what we want for our video. So now we've got the turntable sorted out, what we want to do is make sure that our actual model is rotating with it, because at the moment you'll see it's just sort of sitting on top, unaffected. Now to do that, what we want to do is make these objects children of this turntable, so that the animation of this turntable is also influencing the objects here. So these two objects have to be children of the turntable. Now at the moment in my collection view here, I've got a cube, a cylinder and a sphere. It's kept cylinder because that was the original object. I'm just going to double click and I'm going to call it turntable so I don't confuse myself. Now to make these objects children, what you need to do is select the object that you want to be a child, shift and then select the object that you want to be a parent, in this case turntable. So select, shift select, and what you'll see, this can get a bit confusing, is that the active object, i.e. the last object to be selected is a kind of yellow and the cube is an orange. You need to make sure it's in that order, it's very important. So select, shift select, and then do Control P, so it's Control P, set parent to object. And now what you'll notice is that the cube has disappeared, and that is because it is now a child of the turntable. So we can drop down and we can see that the cube is a child of the turntable. So when we play our animation, the cube's moving, which is exactly what we want. But our sphere isn't. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to select the sphere, shift select the turntable, Control P, set parent to object, and it's also now a child. So everything is underneath the child, and that is what we want. So now all we need to do, I'm actually, oh, this is just a quick warning, make sure that's turned off. Yeah, so when we're happy with our animation, let's turn that off. Let's go back into our modeling tab. You can see that we're now in edit mode because we can see the wireframe and the vertices. We don't want to be in that mode, so go to the top here and click object. And just in the previous, we're now doing exactly what we did in the previous video. We're going to add lights in the camera. So at the moment we can't see our materials because we're in solid view. We're going to go to look depth so that we can see our materials. If we go into the render viewport, oh, again it's all horribly dark. So let's very quickly add a light. I'm going to do this quite quickly. In the previous video I went through it in a bit more detail. I'm just going to scale my spotlights. I'm just going to, whoop, don't want to do that. Just going to move it over here. Okay. Alright, and as with the previous video, my light's positioned, but I can't see it, so quickly going over to the tab for the light, I'm just going to ramp up the power of that light significantly. And again, if you want to see your animation, you just constantly hit the space bar and you can see. And that's really nice, you see, because the shadow is moving, and it should make a really nice little video. Okay, so as with the previous video, and I want to, now that I've got my animation working, I want to put a camera in the scene and actually render a video of the animation. So the first thing I want to do is actually I want to resize the turntable because that's quite small and I don't want it to be quite as visible in my final video. So what I would usually say is select the turntable, hit S and scale. But what you'll see is that it also changes the scale of the sphere and the cube because they are children of the turntable and they are inheriting that scaling. So a way to work around that is to select the turntable, go into edit mode. With everything selected, now hit S, and you can scale that to your heart's content. Go back to object mode and it will all work fine. Now to put a camera in the scene, I'm going to do this quite quickly. In the previous video I went through this a little bit more slowly, but the first thing you want to do is go to add camera, and again you can see the camera sort of gone back to 0, so let's move it out. I'm going to open up a new window by putting my mouse in the corner of the top right hand of the screen, and I've now got 2 windows. This window I'm going to look through the view of the camera, so I'm going to hit 0. So that's actually the view through the camera, and I'm going to keep this as it is so that I can manipulate the camera. I'm just going to change the rotation of the camera, position of the camera, and you can keep playing with these values until in this window you start to see what you would like to make a video of. A shortcut for rotating is just hit R on your keyboard. Okay, I mean this is really far from perfect, but you'll have time to change these values yourselves. What I would also suggest is that here you can see there's no background. You could also put a plane behind here, put a material on it, so you've got a nice backdrop as well. But for now, let's just rotate this camera a bit more, and let's just render out the turntable and the composition on top. Okay, so I'm going to stick with that for now, and if I hit spacebar, I can see my rotations working. I'm very happy with it, and that's what I want to make a video of, what I can see in this box. Okay, so to do this, what you need to do is go back to these tabs down the side, and we want to go into the tab here. It's the output tab. Now scroll right down, and this is going to determine the output of your video or of your file. So what you need to do is go to output. We currently have PNG because we were rendering an image, but now we want to do a video. So go to FFmpeg video and hit encoding. Now this is the format of your final video, so we're going to go to MPEG 4, which is going to give you an MP4, and you can play with the quality settings and the video codec. I'm going to leave these on default, and it's going to render, at the moment it's going to render the length of your timeline, which was 400 frames. Now just to make this really quick, I'm going to reduce that to 20, but I would recommend you leave that on 400 as we have in the tutorial. Now what you need to do is go to render animation, and you'll see it's rendering at the moment. You can see the progress here. So as we're only rendering, I think it was 20 frames, it should be very quick. Okay, so that should be it. But you'll be thinking, where's my video gone? And that's a good question, because I forgot to mention actually that in the output at the top here, you can actually set the destination of your file, and I have set mine on the desktop. but you know, if you render at 400, you'll have the full length, and that will be the final video that you export. So yeah.